You know, there's a specific look a person gets when they realize their entire net worth has just evaporated into thin air. It's not anger, and it's not fear. It's this hollow, gray emptiness that starts behind the eyes and washes over the rest of the face like a slow tide. I saw that look on Evelyn Vance's face as she gripped the bars of the 12-foot steel gate I'd welded shut myself, screaming that I was holding 50 families hostage. Behind her, a line of 50 shiny Mercedes, BMWs, and Teslas sat idling on a dirt road, their engines purring, their drivers confused. And beside her, Marcus Thorne, the hotshot developer who had threatened my family, poisoned my land with dust, and physically put his hands on me just weeks before, looked like he was going to vomit right onto his Italian loafers. It was supposed to be their grand opening. The balloons were up, the champagne was on ice, and the news crews were rolling. They thought their money made them untouchable. They thought they could bully a quiet, retired rancher into submission because I drove a truck that was older than most of their interns. But I just stood there on my porch, sipping black coffee, watching their entire world collapse. For months, these two had treated my family's generational ranch like a nuisance to be paved over. They invaded my privacy with drones, they threatened to condemn my land using corrupt political connections, and they insulted my wife. All to build a luxury community called Summit Heights, right next door. But here's the secret I kept hidden in my back pocket while I watched them pour $20 million into those cabins. I wasn't ignoring them because I was scared. I was waiting. I let them clear the land. I let them build every single house. I let them sell every single unit. Because what they were too arrogant to check, and what I had the 1948 paperwork to prove, was that the only road to their new development wasn't public. It was mine. By the time they realized the trap had sprung, it was too late. Their exclusive community was nothing but a landlocked prison. This is the story of how I used their own greed to bankrupt a corrupt developer, how a simple dusty map became the ultimate weapon, and how I ended up buying their entire luxury subdivision for pennies on the dollar just to turn it into the most exclusive community in the state, for the only residents who actually deserved it, my dogs. To understand how we got to that gate, you have to understand the land. The morning sun hits Miller's Ridge first, turning the pines into gold before it spills down into my pasture. I was sitting on my porch steps that first morning, the wood old and smooth under my jeans. My dog, Gus, a scruffy mix of something loyal and something stubborn, was asleep at my feet, his tail giving a slow thump-thump against the floorboards. This was my life. It was quiet. It was simple. And it was mine. My wife, Sarah, came out through the screen door with that familiar squeak we never bothered to fix. She handed me a plate with 2 pieces of toast, burnt just the way I like it, and sat down next to me. We didn't need to talk. We just watched the day begin on the Miller Ranch. My great-granddad built the house. My granddad dug the well by hand. My dad cleared the lower 40 acres. And me? I was just the caretaker of their legacy. My eyes drifted to the road. We call it the Miller Cutoff. It isn't much to look at, just a ribbon of packed dirt and gravel winding down from our ranch through a stand of ancient oaks to the main highway a mile away. My grandfather and his brothers carved it out of the hillside with shovels and a mule named Bessie. It was the only way in and the only way out. I remember riding my bike down it as a kid, pretending I was a fighter pilot navigating a canyon. I remember driving up it on my first date with Sarah, my hands sweating on the steering wheel. That road wasn't just dirt. It was memory. It was family. For the past few months, though, the peace had been broken. We heard noises from the other side of the ridge, the big parcel of land next to ours that had been sold to some developer from the city. We saw survey stakes with bright pink ribbons fluttering like warning flags. We heard the distant growl of heavy machinery. "Jack, what do you think they're building over there?" Sarah had asked one night, looking out the kitchen window. I shrugged. Whatever it is, it's their side of the fence. Not our problem. I'm an ex-Marine. You learn pretty quick not to waste energy on things you can't control. You watch, you wait, you make a plan. Worry is just a rocking chair. It gives you something to do, but it doesn't get you anywhere. I believed in fences. I believed in property lines. They kept the world in order. But then, one Tuesday, the quiet shattered. A cloud of dust rolled up the Miller Cutoff. That was unusual. Our only visitors were the feed delivery guy and our old friend Frank. This wasn't Frank's beat-up pickup. This was something shiny, black, and expensive, A massive SUV that looked like it had never seen a speck of mud in its life. It crunched to a stop in front of our house, and Gus lifted his head with a low, rumbling growl. "Easy, boy," I whispered, resting a hand on his neck. Two people got out. A woman and a man. The woman wore a white pantsuit, so bright it hurt my eyes in the morning sun. Her hair was pulled back tight enough to snap, and she held a clipboard against her chest like a shield. The man was younger, with a smile that looked like it had been bought off a shelf and a suit that cost more than my tractor. He looked around at our ranch like he was smelling something rotten. They picked their way toward the porch like they were walking through a minefield of manure. The woman stopped 10 feet away, pulling a handkerchief from her pocket to cover her nose. She scanned my porch, the peeling paint on the railing, the stack of firewood, the sleeping dog, and her lip curled. It wasn't just disgust, it was offense. She looked at my home like it was a stain on her perfect world. I didn't stand up. I didn't set down my coffee. I just watched them over the rim of my mug. Marines are good at waiting. It makes civilians nervous. "Mr. Miller," the woman said. Her voice was sharp, clipped, and loud enough to wake the dead. She didn't wait for an answer. "I am Evelyn Vance, president of the Summit Heights Homeowners Association. And frankly, we have some immediate concerns about the visual blight presenting itself here." She gestured vaguely at my entire life. "And this," she added, nodding to the suit beside her, "is Marcus Thorne, our lead developer." I nodded slowly. I didn't offer my hand. "That's me," I said, my voice calm. "What can I do for you?" Marcus gave me that slick smile again. "Mr. Miller, we are here today to discuss a wonderful opportunity. As you know, we are developing a premier luxury community on the adjoining property. 50 exclusive cabins. A new standard in mountain living." He said luxury and exclusive like they were magic words that would make me swoon. To me, they just sounded expensive and annoying. "We're here," he continued, "to finalize the access agreement for your road." I took another sip of coffee. I let the silence hang in the air, heavy and thick. I looked from his smiling face to her impatient one. "Finalize?" I asked. "That's a funny word. I don't remember starting anything." Evelyn Vance tapped her pen on her clipboard. Click, click, click. It sounded like a countdown. "Let's skip the rural pleasantries, shall we?" she said, stepping forward. "We've done our drive-bys. This road, the Miller Cutoff, it's charming in a rustic, falling-apart sort of way, but it's the only logistical vein to our development. We need to secure a permanent easement to pave, widen, and rename it. Summit Approach has a much better ring to it." Thorne chimed in, pulling a checkbook from his jacket pocket. "We are prepared to offer you a generous compassion payment. $5,000. It should be enough to fix whatever happened to your roof." I stared at him. Then I looked at the checkbook. I almost laughed. $5,000 for the heart of my family's land. For the only way in or out. They weren't negotiating. They were telling me. They thought I was some dumb hillbilly who would see a few zeros and roll over like a trained dog. "The road's not for sale," I said. It was that simple. Marcus's smile tightened. It didn't look so friendly anymore. "I think you misunderstand," he said, his voice losing its smooth edge. "This development is a huge benefit to the county. It's progress. We have a lot of important people on our side. The county commissioners are very excited about the new tax revenue." It was a threat, clear as day. He was telling me they had the power, and I didn't. Evelyn Vance took a step forward, invading my personal space. The smell of expensive chemical perfume hit me hard. "Listen to me clearly, Mr. Miller," she hissed, dropping the professional veneer. "This project is a $50 million locomotive. You are a penny on the tracks. We will pave this road. We will put up a gatehouse. And we will have the county condemn this eyesore of a ranch if you become a nuisance." She looked at Gus, who was still sleeping. "And I'd do something about that dog. Summit Heights has strict noise ordinances. We'd hate to have animal control on speed dial." That was the line. They threatened my land. I stayed calm. They threatened my dog. They were dead. "I heard you," I said softly. "I'll think on it." After they drove off, Sarah came out and sat beside me. She put her hand on my arm. It was trembling slightly. "Jack, what are we going to do?" "Eminent domain. Can they do that?" I picked up my coffee mug. It was cold now. "They can try," I said. "But I'm not going to think on their offer. I'm going to think on my plan." The next morning, I drove my old Ford into town. The county records office was in the basement of the courthouse, a place that smelled of old paper and dust. Martha was behind the counter, exactly where she'd been since the Reagan administration. She was a woman made of fierce efficiency and floral print. "Jack Miller," she said, her voice like crinkling parchment. "Checking some fences?" "Just checking history, Martha," I said. "I need to see the old plat maps. The real ones, not the computer stuff." She led me down to the vault. "Good," she muttered. "The computer stuff is garbage. Garbage in, garbage out. The county hired some kid last year to digitize the records, and he spent 3 months scanning coffee stains and calling them property lines." She hauled a massive volume off the shelf. 1940 to 1950. The golden age of cartography. I spent 3 hours hunched over those pages. I wasn't looking for our deed. I knew every inch of my land. I was looking for theirs. And there it was. A survey from 1948. I laid the maps side by side. My heart hammered against my ribs. The lines were absolute. Their property, the big parcel on the ridge, was an island. On 3 sides, it was bordered by the national forest, steep, rocky, protected land. You couldn't build a road there if you had $1 billion. And on the 4th side, my property. My property line ran right along the base of the ridge. The Miller Cutoff, my road, was entirely 100% on my land. Their property didn't touch the highway. It didn't even come close. They were landlocked. A slow, cold smile spread across my face. They didn't have legal access. They had no access at all. They had paid millions for a beautiful piece of mountain land that they couldn't get to without my permission. And they had tried to bully me for it. I made certified copies of everything. I drove home with the envelopes sitting on the passenger seat like ammunition. That night, I showed Sarah. "So, they have nothing," she whispered. "Without our road. All they have is a very expensive forest." "Exactly," I said. "So do we tell them?" she asked. "Do we call their lawyer?" I looked out the window toward the ridge where the sound of their machines had become a daily annoyance. I thought of Evelyn Vance's smug face. "No," I said. "We don't tell them a thing." "What do you mean?" "I mean, we let them build it," I said, leaning forward. "We let them clear the land. We let them pour the foundations. We let them spend every single dollar they have. We let them sell their 50 luxury cabins to 50 rich buyers. We let them get all the way to the finish line." Sarah stared at me, a slow understanding dawning in her eyes. And then, I said, "we closed the gate." The next few months were a test of patience. The noise was constant. The whine of saws at 6 a.m. The thud of pile drivers rattling my grandfather's picture off the mantelpiece. The dust, pulverized rock that tasted like chalk and coated Gus's water bowl every morning. And the letters. They arrived once a week in crisp envelopes from a big city law firm. They claimed that because people had used the road over the years, a lie, only our family used it. It was a public right-of-way. They threatened legal action. We punched holes in them and put them in a binder labeled "Fan Mail from Idiots." Then came the personal touches. I caught a drone hovering over my back porch, peeping in our windows. I didn't wave. I just grabbed my garden hose and sprayed a high-pressure arc of water into the air. The drone sputtered and crashed into the pig pen. 2 days later, Evelyn Vance stood at the fence line holding a color swatch. "Mr. Miller," she shouted, "since you insist on remaining, we need you to paint your barn. That shade of red is aggressive. We're going for an earth tone palette. Sage. Taupe." "It's a barn, Mrs. Vance," I said. "It's barn red." "It's an eyesore," she shrieked. "And move that rusted tractor. It ruins the view from Lot 4. "That tractor runs fine," I muttered. "And Lot 4 is looking at a lawsuit, not a view." Then came the fake inspectors. One guy claimed to be from the EPA, investigating illegal dumping. I asked for his badge. He flashed a cheap plastic card. I told him Sheriff Brody was on his way to verify it. The guy was in his car and peeling out before I finished the sentence. We documented everything. Every drone, every threat, every fake official. I set up hidden cameras along the road. They were building their cabins, and I was building my case. The day things turned physical, I knew it was the breaking point. It was late afternoon. I was fixing a section of fence by the main gate. Marcus Thorne's SUV came roaring up, screeching to a halt. He got out with 2 of his biggest construction foremen, guys who looked like they lifted weights for a living. "Miller," Thorne yelled, "we're done playing games. My crew is starting to pave this road on Monday." I stood my ground, holding my fencing tool. "This is private property, Thorne. You're trespassing." "We're not going anywhere," he sneered. Move aside. He stepped into my space and shoved me. 2 hands to the chest. Hard. It was the move of a man who has never been hit in the mouth. He expected the old rancher to stumble. But I didn't stumble. I caught his wrist in a grip I learned in the Corps, stepped in, pivoted, and used his own momentum against him. It wasn't a fight. It was physics. Thorne went face first into the gravel with a squeal that was entirely undignified. The foreman froze. I looked at them, calm as a mill pond. He put his hands on me. I said, "That was his choice. What you do next is your choice." They backed off. Thorne scrambled up, dusty and humiliated. "You're a dead man, Miller," he wheezed. "Get off my land," I said. The next day, Sheriff Brody came by. Thorne had filed an assault complaint. I showed Brody the video from the gate camera. He watched Thorne shove me, then watched him eat gravel. Brody rewound it twice, chuckling. "Technically, Luke, he assaulted you," Brody said, sipping iced tea on my porch. "You neutralized the threat with minimum force. I'll go have a chat with Mr. Thorne about filing false police reports." Then came the lawsuit. A quiet title action. They were asking a judge to declare they had an easement by necessity. I called Frank, our family lawyer. Frank operated out of an office that looked like a paper mill explosion, but the man was a genius. He looked at the 1948 map. He looked at the binder of threats. He looked at the video of the assault. "Luke," Frank said, wiping sandwich crumbs off his tie, "do you know why big city firms charge $500 an hour? So they can afford the cocaine it takes to come up with logic this bad. Easement by necessity only works if the lands were once connected. Your land and theirs have been separate since the Taft administration. They bought a landlocked parcel. That's their mistake, not your problem." He slammed the binder shut. "We're not just going to defend. We're going to countersue for harassment. We are going to make them regret the day they learned to spell Miller. We let the lawsuit brew. We let them think they were winning by dragging it out. And then, the date was set. The first Saturday in June. The grand opening. They advertised it everywhere. A new peak in luxury living. I saw the tents go up through my binoculars. Caterers, string quartets, gold balloons. On Friday, the day before the party, I called my buddy Rick. Rick runs a welding shop. He brought out the zombie apocalypse package, a 12-foot steel gate, matte black, set in 4 feet of concrete reinforced with rebar. We installed it right in the middle of the Miller cutoff, 20 feet inside my property line. Rick welded the hinges shut. There were no bolts to undo. The only way through was a plasma cutter. I hung the sign myself. Private road. No access to Summit Heights. Saturday morning dawned clear and beautiful. Around 10 a.m., the first car arrived. A silver Mercedes. It stopped at the gate. Then a BMW. Then an Audi. Within 20 minutes, a line of luxury cars snaked all the way back to the highway. At 11 a.m., Marcus Thorne and Evelyn Vance came running down the hill from the tent, their faces masks of panic. They saw the gate. They saw the cars. They saw me walking slowly down the road, carrying a large rolled-up tube. "Miller," Thorne bellowed. "What is the meaning of this?" I stopped on my side of the gate. "Morning, Thorne." "Vance." "Shame about the parking." Evelyn Vance grabbed the bars, shaking them. "Open this gate. You are holding 50 families hostage. This is kidnapping." "No, ma'am," I said, loudly enough for the news crew behind her to hear. "This is trespassing prevention." I unrolled the map. I held it up against the bars. "As you can all see," I said to the crowd of confused buyers, "Summit Heights is completely landlocked. This road is, and always has been, private property. You never purchased an easement. You just assumed you could steal it." I looked at the buyers. "I'm sorry for your trouble, but this developer has been lying to you. Your beautiful new cabins have no way to get to them." Evelyn Vance lost it. She started screaming insults, calling me a hick, a manipulator. The cameras rolled. It was beautiful. The court case was a slaughter. Frank was brilliant. He revealed an email we'd subpoenaed from Thorne to his surveyor. "The access issue is a technicality. We will bully the rancher into selling. If he doesn't, we'll bury him in legal fees until he dies." When the judge saw that, he lowered his glasses. He looked at Thorne and said, "Mr. Thorne, you seem to have dug a grave, but I believe you are the one standing in it." The judge denied their easement. He granted our countersuit for harassment, awarding us $250,000 in punitive damages. And he referred Thorne to the district attorney for investor fraud. Summit Heights collapsed instantly. The bank foreclosed. Thorne went to jail. Vance disappeared in disgrace. A year later, the bank auctioned the property. 50 brand-new, luxury cabins and the land they sat on. But there was a catch. It was still landlocked. Frank and I went to the auction. A few flippers were there, looking to make a deal. But Frank just casually set the big laminated map on the hood of my truck, pointing to the red line blocking the road. The bidders looked at the map, looked at my gate, and put their hands down. "Do I hear 1 million? The auctioneer begged. Silence. 500,000. Silence. 100,000, I said. Sold. The auctioneer yelled, looking like he wanted to cry. To Mr. Luke Miller. That evening, Sarah and I sat on the porch of the model home, our new home. We looked down at the quiet valley. We owned it all. The ridge, the cabins, the silence. 100 grand for 50 houses, Sarah said, shaking her head. What are we going to do with them? I looked at Gus, who was sniffing a marble pillar. I smiled. I was thinking of starting a new community. Very exclusive. Low density. What's the rule for residency? Sarah asked. I took a sip of coffee. 4 legs only. I think Gus and his buddies at the shelter need some vacation homes. And that's exactly what we did. Because sometimes, the best neighbors aren't the ones with the most money. They're the ones who appreciate a good nap on a sunny porch. Thanks for listening, folks. And remember, check your property lines. Don't let anyone push you around. And never, ever underestimate a quiet man with a coffee mug and a plan. Let me know in the comments. What would you do with 50 empty luxury cabins? I'm open to suggestions. Stay safe out there.